We've got some Democrat defections already on impeachment. Are they going to have enough? Greta Thunberg is the Time Person of the Year. We're going to have a little talk about climate change, people. And a black conservative was attacked on campus. It is time we have a very, very frank discussion that's going to make you uncomfortable about bullying. All that's coming up right now on I'm Right. Okay, we have a very brief impeachment update. I'm not going to spend all day on it. I'm not even going to spend the whole segment on it. Here's what it boils down to. Democrats are filing articles of impeachment, and there may be some trouble on the home front. See, Democrats are facing a real credibility problem. We've gone over that several times on this show. As the impeachment process has gone on, of course, they're polling everything because everything's about politics. Nothing's actually about the law. And as they pulled things throughout this process, they've found that independents are going away and away and away and away from the Democrat Party. In fact, Trump's approval numbers throughout this process have been rocketing upwards, which is basically a disaster scenario for Democrats. Now, how does this work for 2020? Keep in mind, there are a bunch of Democrats, I don't remember exactly how many, I think it's in the 30s in Congress, who are in seats from districts that Donald Trump won in 2016. What's that tell you? It's not necessarily a hard blue district. That's a district that has plenty of Republicans in it and plenty of people that liked Donald Trump. So Democrats are worried, or are they, about defections? An article came out this morning. They're already expecting 6 to 7 Democrat defections who will vote against the articles of impeachment in the House. What they need is 16 or 17 Democrat defections to vote against those articles of impeachment in order to kill impeachment. But there was one little interesting nugget that came out in there today, and that interesting nugget was whipping. Now, whipping means something different to those of us who were raised in the old school ways, but whipping in the House of Representatives means something called whipping votes, meaning your House leader wants you to vote this way. You're not sure if you're going to. They start whipping votes. And it used to actually be a physical whip, but we don't have to go into that. Essentially, you get bullied, threatened, and punished if you don't vote the way leadership wants. Well, there's something interesting with the House impeachment stuff. They announced, they didn't really announce, it leaked out, they're not going to be whipping votes for impeachment. They're not going to be burning up the phones. Nancy Pelosi is not going to be feebly kicking down somebody's door and saying, you will vote for articles of impeachment. Why? Well, everyone else may not know, but I know. They don't want it to pass. Every Democrat with half a brain wants the articles of impeachment to fail because of Democrat defections. Now, you may say, Jesse, you're crazy. No, I'm not crazy. If it fails, then they can go back to their base and say, hey, man, I tried. Donald Trump's the devil, and we tried to impeach him, but people defected. I can't do anything about that. It gives them full cover. If it doesn't fail, then it goes from here to the Senate, where the Democrats get embarrassed. The best thing in the history of mankind would be for this to fail in the House of Representatives. However, don't bank on that. I actually don't think it'll fail, but that's an interesting little nugget that they're not whipping votes. Representative Collins, who's been all over this impeachment thing, had something very frank to say about the status of Congress, and he's not wrong.
The real legacy of this impeachment hearing will not be the removal of Donald Trump as president. In fact, if anything, they see the majority for what they are, on a 3-year vendetta to get someone that they couldn't beat, and they're desperate to do it before he beats them again next year. Here's the real damage. It's the institutional damage to this body. It's the institutional damage to getting information even after hearing started, for not having the rules followed, for having this committee, as the chairman warned us about 20 years ago when he said this great committee, the Judiciary Committee, should never accept a report from someone else without verifying it and having hearings to make sure it was there. Unless, as the chairman said, we become a rubber stamp. I don't know about you, but I'm not a rubber stamp, and I don't like what I have been forced to do.
The credibility of America's institutions is in very serious trouble, ladies and gentlemen. I don't do doom and gloom stuff here, but let's just say the FBI, Congress, judges, the Catholic Church, Boy Scouts, you name it, so many of the rock-solid American institutions that so many of us have grown up admiring. You look at these people and you think, wow, that's awesome. Oh, look, FBI, that's really cool. And now they get sneered at. There has been a cost to this sham impeachment nonsense a long-term cost with Republicans and Democrats. And that's the cost is people looking and thinking, Congress, what a bunch of morons. That sounds nice and it's fun. Don't get me wrong. We should always point and laugh at politicians. They certainly deserve it. But in the long run, it is not good for the American people to lose faith in their governing body. That's not good for any society. In the long run, that's how societies crumble. Now, moving on from all that. It was a big hubbub yesterday, and apparently I need to address it with you, that Time magazine, even though I can't believe that's still a thing. Time magazine named Greta Thunberg, the 16-year-old climate activist from Sweden, they named her their Person of the Year, Time Person of the Year. You know, Greta Thunberg's been all over the news. She sailed across the ocean blue. Look, greenhouse gases, you're stealing my childhood. She's on TV scowling at somebody and screaming at the television at all times, yada, yada, yada. Of course, Hillary Clinton, because she's basically the worst human being on the planet, had to go to Twitter right away and said, quote, "I couldn't think of a better Person of the Year than Greta Thunberg. I'm grateful for all she's done to raise awareness of the climate crisis and her willingness to tell the hard, motivating truths. Change is coming, whether you like it or not. Hashtag gutsy women." All right, setting all that aside. Look, here's how you should think about it. Time magazine doesn't matter. Their Person of the Year doesn't matter. They gave the thing to Adolf Hitler before, okay? Let's not put too much stock in Time magazine's Person of the Year. Greta Thunberg doesn't matter either. She's a 16-year-old kid. She obviously has horrible parents. They toss her out there to the wolves, and now, of course, the left-wing media wants you to think, you can't criticize her. She's just a child. No, politics is a contact sport. You want to be the face of remaking the world's economy, of wiping out coal towns across the world? People are not going to take kindly to that. But all that stuff aside, you need to remember something about the history of mankind, and you need to know two things about climate change activists. One, people have always done this. People have always done insane, maddening things throughout the history of the world in a lame attempt, but an attempt to control the weather, in an attempt to hold off natural disasters. Did you know that the Aztec people used to voluntarily give up their own tiny children, voluntarily give up their own tiny children to be marched to the top of the temple, have their fingernails ripped out, and then have their hearts carved out of their chest while they're still alive? Parents did that on purpose to their own kids. Why? Well, it was a sacrifice to their god Tlaloc. He was the god of rain and the god that kept away hurricanes and floods. People, that was one example of a million of human beings throughout the history of mankind doing evil, horrible, awful, insane things in order to try to control something that they cannot control. Because we as human beings, we want control. We fear change. We fear natural disasters. We look at the things we can't change, and we want somebody to comfort us with the knowledge that if we could just do something, that'll never happen again. Look, I live in Houston. I know all about hurricanes. I know all about flooding. And during those horrible moments when somebody's underwater, you look to the skies and think, is there anything I could do? It's human nature. So just know that these climate change nutters, number one, the first thing you need to know, they're not new. They're not new at all. And number two, you need to remember that story about carving out kids' hearts. Not because it's something pleasant to focus on, but because you need to remember people throughout history have done evil, evil things in order to stave off the end of the planet. Human beings are capable of doing terrible things to other human beings, and they're capable of doing the worst things to other human beings when they think they're actually saving human beings. I know, it doesn't make sense, but that is the truth of the matter. So while it's fine to make fun of Greta, and that's fine, go ahead. It's fine to make fun of, all the climate change hippies standing on the street corner in their iPhones, tweeting about how they're against climate change, their iPhone that's made from oil, by the way. It's fun to poke fun of them, and we should. And it's fun to vote them out of office, and we should. But never forget, always keep in the back of your mind what these people are capable of, what these people will do if they're ever able to gain power. And let me tell you, people, it's frightening. It's frightening. And it's frightening for a lot worse reasons than jobs in the economy. It's frightening because these freaking people are vicious. All that may have made you uncomfortable, but I'm right. We're going to talk to Cam Edwards about it here in just a sec. Hang on. Joining me now, one of my favorite people in the world, BearingArms.com, Cam Edwards. Cam, I have this big, broad topic I've been focusing on lately because we all know I'm a really heady person who thinks about lofty things that other people aren't capable of. And essentially, this is where I'm at. I feel like we have a crumbling of America's institutions, or at least a crumbling of the public trust in America's institutions, whether that be justified or not, or whether we ever should have had that trust. When you look at things like the FBI, things honestly like the Boy Scouts, the Catholic Church, the Congress most definitely, although people have never liked politicians, they think less of them now. And I think this spells trouble for the country. I don't think that's a good thing. As much as I like making fun of politicians, I feel like Americans trust everybody less than they ever have, and that's bad.
Well, I trust you, Jesse. So we have that at least, right?
Yes.
You know, look, I think that we are in a moment where a lot of these institutions, as you say, are revealing themselves to be comprised of individuals. And what was Madison's quote? If men were angels, would have no need of government. And we know that non-angelic men and women are, running these institutions. And so no place is perfect. I think what we're seeing here, though, is that there have been a lot of abuses of power. It's not that there have been human foibles and mistakes have been made, but there have been actual abuses of power in these institutions. And that, I think, is what is really starting to bother people because we feel powerless. And so I think that, the natural response when you see an abuse of power and you feel powerless to stop it is you want to claw back some of that power and put some of that power back in the hands of the citizenry.
Well, I agree with you that that's what we've seen is abuses of power, but I mean, isn't that the history of the world? I know you're a huge history buff too. I mean, you look and the history of the world is abuses of power, but societies have kept on churning on until they abuse people so much that they've had enough of it, and that's when things crumble.
Well, yeah, but one of the things that is supposed to be true of the United States as opposed to other countries is that our system of checks and balances is supposed to prevent those abuses of power in government. And I think one of the things that we're starting to wake up and recognize is that not all of the changes that have been wrought over the last, 100 years or so have been beneficial, certainly not to our individual freedom, but not even to how the country functions. And again, you talk about clawing back some of that power in terms of we don't have a direct democracy, and I'm not calling for that, but, perhaps we need to remove some of the power of the bureaucracy, put it back in the hands of elected officials. Again, it's not going to be a perfect solution, but it would be, I think, a little bit better than the abdication of responsibility that we've seen from a lot of members of Congress and Congress as a whole, frankly.
What do we do with the FBI, Cam? I understand that everybody feels differently about this, and I understand I'm supposed to take this line of there are plenty of good men and women at the FBI, and while I'm sure that's definitely the case, I'm sorry, Cam, when I see FBI lawyers changing the words yes to no in order to get a warrant to spy on an American citizen, when I see 17 cases of inaccurate or incomplete information in order to spy on an American citizen, and that's just the most recent FBI, mistakes, if we want to be generous and call them that. I got to be honest, man, I need somebody to convince me why we need a federal law enforcement arm if they're going to abuse the American people.
Well, I think you're not alone in that. And, again, you can look back in history in the early 1970s when some of the abuses of the FBI under Hoover came to light. You saw, I think, a backlash, and you saw that engagement by Congress of, okay, we're gonna put you on a tight leash. Unfortunately, right now in the House, they're ready to let the FBI run roughshod as long as it's in pursuit of the president, right? And so you now have to couple this dysfunctional political reality that we're in alongside these abuses of power. And that is why I think it is so concerning right now, Jesse, because all of the ingredients are there for, a really explosively bad situation in this country.
That's what worries me, Cam, is I feel like we are at, and I don't want to be melodramatic, and you're really good about pulling me back from the brink on this stuff, but I feel like we're at, correct me if I'm wrong, not a single member, Democrat member of the House or United States Senate has spoken out and said a single word about the abuse of the FBI. I'm not talking about endorsing Trump or something like that. I'm not naive. It's still politics. They can still hate Trump's guts, but not one person feels that it's relevant to step forward and say, this is not right. They shouldn't do this. If that's where we are, Cam, man, that's a bad place to be as a country. It just is.
It absolutely is. And listen, I can't rein you in here right now. I mean, one of the Virginia's congressmen just talked about calling out the National Guard in counties like mine that have adopted these Second Amendment sanctuary resolutions. So, I'm not at a point here where I can be the calm voice of rationality, Jesse, because I'm just as worried as you are. And if it becomes this zero-sum game on both sides, and it's just about power, and that's the only thing that matters, and once you have power, then the goal is to exercise it against your enemies as much as you possibly can, then this country is not going to be a republic for much longer. It will absolutely fall apart. But again, I'm not seeing any real effort on the part of the left to actually, want to do anything other than bring this country down, unfortunately. I feel like you look at the Democratic primary right now, for example, and I think you've got, a handful of folks who portray themselves as moderate, and they'd probably like to keep the status quo in place. But then you've got a group of folks who are calling for these, big, deep structural changes. They are not happy with the country as it is. They want to remake the country and in their image of what a utopia would be. And it's easy to tear things down. It's really tough to build things up.
Man, it is. All right, moving on. Okay, not that I take any stock in Time Magazine or Greta Thunberg. I'm not talking about them specifically. Everybody saw Greta Thunberg was named Time Person of the Year, blah, 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 blah. I'm not worried about that. What I am worried about, Cam, is the history of the world is climate change people doing really, really violent, horrible stuff. And I'm not talking about America. I mean, I brought up an example in the first segment about the Aztecs carving out the hearts of their own children and cheering it on in order to control the rain and the hurricanes and the floods and things like that. I don't feel like this is going away, and I feel like these people are getting more power and more money behind them, and I don't feel like Americans appreciate how vicious these people can be.
You're probably right about that, because we haven't seen a lot of that here on our soil. I'm not concerned too much about a rise of Aztec culture and, a child slaughter and infanticide, but I am concerned. I mean, you look at what's going on in England, for example, over the last couple of months, and some of the violent protests that we've seen, some of the goofball protests as well. It's easy to laugh at this, right? And in fact, I think in some ways they want to present a somewhat silly face because the real agenda of the movement is to dramatically change the way that each and every one of us live our lives. And to reduce, frankly, our standard of living in the name of saving the planet. And it's one thing to say, come dance with us and we'll dance our way to a greener future. It's another thing to say, look, you're all going to have to live with rolling blackouts. Grandma might not be able to get the power for her oxygen machine, but you know what? That's the price that has to be paid in order to stop these sea levels from rising.
I'll dance with you anytime, Cam. Cam Edwards, editor of BearingArms.com. Thank you for joining me tonight.
It is always a pleasure, Jesse. We'll do this again soon.
Be good, my man. All right, people, here it is. This will be yet another segment that's going to get me in trouble. We're going to talk about bullying, how we're failing at addressing bullying, and I'm going to give you some tools you can use to go forward. All that's coming up next. Okay, this video has been making the rounds on the internet for a couple days, so I felt like I needed to address it from a broader standpoint. First, I want you to watch it. I believe this is San Diego State. That may not be right, but this is there's a black conservative on campus, and he was assaulted physically and verbally by this creature. And I would just want you to watch the video, and then we're going to talk about it.
You leave my friends alone, all right?
I'll leave my friends alone.
You'll leave them alone?
Dude, do you want to talk to Tom Carroll about this? I'm happy to go.
There's nothing wrong with this. There's nothing wrong with this.
Come on.
What have I done?
You're harassing me.
Whoa! That is not okay. That is not okay. You cannot do that. That is battery. That is assault.
For my friend.
Stop. Stop, Henry. It's okay. Look at this. Look at this.
You're gonna end up.
Look at this. Whoa! that.
Calm down. It's okay. Calm down. It's all right. Calm down. It's okay.
I'm good. I'm good.
I love the lady stepping in, telling the guy holding the camera to calm down at the end. Okay. Now, I don't want to address the specific little spat there on college campus. We don't need to get into that. Here's what we do need to get into. We have a plague in this society, and that plague is we are no longer teaching people how to handle confrontations, and we're no longer teaching people how to handle bullies. So let me just lay this out here really frank, and then I'll break it down for you. You know the best way to handle a bully? It's ball up your fist and smash it into his nose. That's the best way to handle a bully. You can make all the arguments in the world and all the excuses in the world for that violent little dwarf slapping some guy's camera and kicking him and threatening his life. And look, I don't know that guy's background. I am positive he probably had a dad who was useless. I don't know his story, nor do I care to know his story. And I hope he gets help. I hope he calms down. I hope he grows up. I genuinely do. I don't wish ill on that human being. But if you're somebody who's that guy, if you stand 5'1" on college campus and you see somebody holding up a phone to you and you feel free to cock back your arm multiple times and strike that individual, do you know what you are? You're somebody who's never had that great lesson that every guy needs once or twice in his life, and that's the lesson of being socked in the face. Look, I've been socked in the face, more than once. It's not a pleasant experience at all, but it's also not the end of the world. And you know what it teaches you as a man? It teaches you manners. It teaches you to keep your hands to yourself. It teaches you to watch your mouth. And here's what we've done in the United States of America in this ultra-feminized society where we're never allowed to do anything. This is what we've done because I see my kids get told this at school all the time now. It's absolutely madness. And look, little Billy, if somebody strikes you, you need to go through the anti-bullying steps. And first thing is you run and tell the teacher immediately. What? Look, that sounds nice. That sounds really smart when you're sitting there in the teacher's lounge and you're on campus and, everybody's patting themselves on the back. Look how gentle. You know what that does? It strips away the respect of the kid who got hit he has for himself. It strips away even more respect of the bully who hit the kid. You know when things were better? When we had fewer and fewer of these kids finally snapping and shooting up schools? You know when that was? In a time where you stepped back behind the gym after school and everybody gathered around because everyone likes to see a fight, and you went and duked it out a little bit, and look, nobody really got hurt because no one knew how to fight anyway, and look, you're in middle school, no one can hit that hard, or high school. You pick each other up when you're done, a bloody nose, a black eye. Normally, and I'm not exaggerating, I've been in plenty, I've seen plenty, normally you hug it out, and half the time you become best friends after the fact. No harm, no foul. You step out back, trade hands on the grass. Everybody's there to make sure things don't get out of hand. You walk away, and everything's fine. But for some reason, we've eliminated that. And for some reason, we've convinced young men that any kind of physical confrontation is evil and should be avoided at all costs. And the first thing you need to do, Billy, is fill out this form and make sure you bring it to your math teacher and then show it to the bully next time he's stealing your lunch money. No. That's not the first thing you need to do. You need to hit him if he's hitting you. And if you see him hitting another kid, a weaker kid, you also need to step in and hit him. And I know that that's uncomfortable. And I'm not sitting here promoting some kind of horrible violence. I'm promoting an ordered society. When you have some kid on college campus, and look, that's one of several examples I could have shown you. I had all this video lined up, but I'm not going to go into it at the time. If you have some kid like that, who's content with pulling out his cell phone and then walking up and socking somebody like that, just without a thought in the world, that's a kid who's never been taught extremely valuable lessons. And you know what? I worry as much for that kid as the kid he hit, because look, that time it turned out okay. The guy doing the filming, the guy who got hit was doing that's not okay thing. And the teacher came out and everything was fine and everything worked out fine this time. That's the worst thing that could have happened to the kid who was doing the hitting. Because one day, that mouthy little dork is going to hit somebody he should not hit. And then he might find himself in bad trouble when you're not out behind the gym on the grass with everybody surrounding you. One day that guy is going to confront somebody who's truly dangerous. And on that day, nobody's going to look back and say, well, I guess our anti-bullying program didn't work out. It doesn't work out. Things used to be different in this society, and the truth of the matter is people were more polite and less inclined to scream at people and cuss at people and hit people when they'd been taught manners with somebody's fist. I understand that that is going to make so many people mad and uncomfortable, and I can see everybody just trying to change the channel. This isn't gentle. People, life is not gentle. Teach your kid manners, or somebody else will. Now, to talk about that and several other things, we're going to bring on the host of This Is My Show, former counterterrorism officer Drew Berquist. Hang on. Welcome back. Joining me now, former counterterrorism officer and host of This Is My Show, Drew Berquist. Drew, I've got a few things I've got to go through with you today, so try to keep up. I understand, I think a lot faster than everybody, so it's difficult for lesser people like yourself, but look, just do the best you can. First of all, Doug Collins gave a little speech on the House floor about Congress, losing face, about the American people losing faith in Congress, and that's fine. I agree with him. Look, people have always hated, politicians. But I think we have a grander problem in America today when it comes to the FBI. I mentioned, the Catholic Church, Boy Scouts, the university system, whatever it may be. We have a grand problem of American people losing faith in some of our biggest institutions. Is this a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Am I wrong? Have they always hated these things?
I think, Jesse, you're never wrong. Come on. I think that, look, people have, as you've said, I don't think people have really valued politicians and respected them over the years. So this isn't a new phenomena, but it always is to the politician saying it or politicians saying it. Hey, we're losing face here. No, sorry, man, you lost it a long time ago. So I don't think it is. I think that, maybe a little bit more so with the FBI and CIA and some of these organizations, because in the old days, there used to be this mystique and this understanding of you don't know what they're doing, but they're doing stuff that's helpful, so just trust them. And now it's an entitled America where everyone has to know. Even if you don't have a security clearance, you are entitled to know everything that's going on at the highest levels of government because that's what everyone's telling you. So I think the fact that they're disappointed in government maybe makes a little bit more sense, but it's a problem that we're talking about it as much as we are. It's a problem that people feel that level of entitlement. And, look, we've both worked in government, military organizations. They are kind of disappointing.
They are. Is that all it is, Drew? Is it just the fact that we have more access to more info that people never had before? Because I'll tell you, man, that was me. I mean, we're talking 5-10 years ago. I see somebody with an FBI jacket on the back, and I'm thinking, man, that's awesome. And look, it's a G-man. Look, he's out there doing some good. Oh, the FBI, that's really cool. And look, whether it's right or wrong, I hear the name FBI now, and I'm like, oh, this should be good. And that's yeah.
Well, I mean, and I think, look, the tough thing about this is everything's gotten politicized. We've seen just the massive fallout, all the crazy stuff that's happened these last few years at FBI, CIA, all these organizations, NSA to a little bit of a lesser extent. But you see that, and it is disappointing to see, but there are still good people on the ground. The problem is these careerists, the people that rise the ranks who never have done anything at their jobs, they were either appointed or their grandfather was there before and they got a job because of it. Those are the people that cause the problem. So the people, on the street tend to still be good. They're doing God's work, going out and doing the mission. It's all this other stuff that unfortunately clouds it. And now you do. Now you have that response. You see someone in an FBI jacket. He's not that cool. He's probably trying to ruin our country. That's probably not true. But it's a shame because these people at the top have really, really disturbed the name and their reputation to the point where I don't know if you get it back.
Yeah, that's the problem is I don't know. Once it's gone, boy, it's tough to earn back that kind of trust. And the problem is, Drew, that I see is nobody's even pretending as if there's trust to earn back. I mean, I mentioned this earlier with Cam that, look, not a single Democrat, not one Democrat in the House of Representatives or the Senate has said a negative word about what the FBI did with these FISA things, with the information we now have. I'm not saying they have to become, Donald Trump campaigners, but not one has felt compelled to come out and say, yeah, that's probably not good. So when there's no accountability and there's not even a thought of accountability, that is what really disenfranchises people.
Yeah. No, if it's something that takes a group or an individual off of the narrative that they're pushing out there, they don't do it, which is a huge problem on, just the principle of it all. It shows how weak these people really are, and that they're not in it for America. They're not in it for you and me. They're not in it for everyone out there. They're in it for themselves and pushing this message and this agenda that they're trying to pump out, again, through the mainstream media, through all of their different channels. And that's the disappointing part, is you guys aren't here for us. You're here for yourself, and it's as indicated by the strength of the economy and everything that's going on, unemployment, all these things that are great right now. And they can't talk about that because it takes them off narrative. They can't talk about the abuses with FBI and all the FISA abuses. I can tell you all the stuff that happened there on the intel side is so wrong. It is so hard to get a FISA warrant. And the fact that they were able to do this on bogus information is just absolutely mind-blowing to me.
It is. And look, we brought up the climate change people earlier too, and I will tell you, man, these people are, like, I'm talking about the Time Person of the Year stuff with Greta, and not that I give a crap about what a 16-year-old girl says. I didn't care about what 16-year-old girls said when I was 16. I'm talking about the broader climate change agenda. I feel like people do not really understand how vicious these people can be, and that their end goal is anti-human. I mean, when people joke about, flat earth when it comes to these people, that is their end goal. If you ever try to nail down their message, the bottom line is you and I shouldn't be here, Drew.
Yeah. Well, exactly. They don't care. And it's those folks, it's so many other small groups. And what blows my mind is you look at the percentages and the figures, and not all of them are perfect. So I think it's hard to come up with data. And these days you can't trust data anyways. But literally, these groups who are so passionate about that issue, they're so passionate about the LGBT issue or whatever, fill in the blank with a hot, the issue du jour. It's such a minority. Like, it's a small fraction of people who either are passionate about it and or care about it, but yet we're letting them as a country, and the media is letting them perpetuate this message and this whatever the problem is. In this case, climate change. Like, everyone keeps talking about it. It's like, hold up. Not everyone cares about this. Not everyone believes it and agrees with it. But ipso facto, we're letting it happen because we're getting bullied around by it.
Do you know that forever I thought ipso facto was inso facto?
I didn't, but it makes total sense.
All right.
I mean, again, I've told you before, I thought it was doggy dog world, not dog. I'm going with, I was like on the rap theme, not the actual what they're saying theme.
Yes.
We'll learn together. We'll learn together.
I wish people could hear the private conversations we've had. Actually, I take that back. No, I do not.
Yeah,
finally.
Probably not good.
I just came out pro hitting people in the previous segment. I think we have a real failure to properly address the way to deal with bullies in this country. And I showed the video of that, that little pipsqueak in California repeatedly hitting somebody on camera.
Yeah.
And what I said, Drew, was I'm not judging that guy. I don't know what he's been through. Probably had bad parents, whatever it may be. But I know that that's a guy who simply has not been socked in the jaw enough in his life. I know that for a fact.
Amen. I couldn't agree more. I mean, it's simple stuff. Like, and in so many of these cases, I read a great article about it. You've got these folks who have gone through whatever they've gone through to get to the point where they think that people care what they're saying, which is hilarious because no one does. But they think that they're in this huge clash and this huge battle, and they're not, because in most cases we're not fighting back. Look, I don't care what you're talking about with this issue or that issue. Just go your own way. We choose, you and I, common sense, rational people. I don't like this place. I don't like this establishment. I don't like this idea. I'm not going to go protest about it or start a fight or punch someone over it. I'm just going to go over here. But they're clashing for the sake of clashing. And again, they're this small percentage of the population that's doing it, but they're the ones who are getting all the attention. So it makes it seem so much bigger than it really is. And we're letting it happen.
Why are leftists so violent? Besides the fact that they've never been punched in the nose, why are they so violent? I mean, we've seen this for 3 years now, Drew. This is not exactly some isolated incident. I had a million videos I could have shown, but I didn't, of
Right.
people, you know, anyone wearing a MAGA hat, anybody on the right being spit at, cussed at, punched, kicked all over the country. It's become a real problem. Granted, the media will never report on it. It's a real problem. I don't understand why they're so violent.
I really don't either, because especially when you claim to be the party or the group, whether it's just Democrats in general or it's the LGBTQ portion within the Democrats. Obviously, there are some of those that are Republicans too, but like, you've got these small groups, and in this case, you know, a very big group it seems, with the violent leftist message that's going out there. And why they're so angry, I don't know. But I mean, they're clearly lacking some serious social conflict and conflict resolution skills that the rest of us adjusted human beings learned. But they can't handle the state, and they don't know how to do it. And they claim that they're this loving, you know, happy-go-lucky. Everyone's great. The world's great. You know, let's just keep your chin up. But if you disagree with us, we're going to punch you in the chin. It's going to look funny because we've never punched anyone before, but we're going to try. And that's kind of the people. But why they are, I have no idea. It's literally mind-blowing to me.
Drew Berquist. By the way, quick disclaimer before you come on next time. I noticed you said de jour earlier. Look, this is America. We don't speak Spanish on this show. But he is the host of This Is My Show with Drew Berquist. Thank you for coming on.
Hey, thanks for having me, Jesse.
You bet. All right. We've got well, we're about to tug at the heartstrings. Hang on. Well, there are very, very few things that will make my black, ice-cold heart actually beat. And adoption is one of those things. Kids who are hurting is one of those things. I don't know why that is, but it just gets to me to no end. So when I saw this kid who wants to be adopted and talking about God, I have to tell you, almost started filling out some adoption papers myself. The wife might not have been happy, but check this out.
He's brought me through many, many things. As far as abuse, before I came into CPS, he's brought me through a lot, just a lot overall. Waking me up this morning, you know what I mean? Started me on my way. I'm in my right mind. I know what I'm doing. I know who I am. And I'm proud of being the person that I am. Reason why I want to be adopted is because I know there's a family out there that fits me in the best possible way that they can.
Man, tell me you're not rooting for that kid. So now I'm not going to ask you to do any of those. You know, I'm not going to do that disclaimer. I don't know if you're the praying type. If you're not, start. Bow your head tonight, say a prayer for that young man. Bow your head tonight and say a prayer right now, actually, for that young man. That is somebody who seems like a wonderful human being. Let us hope that he finds the perfect family for him. Sounds like he's had a pretty rough upbringing. And it doesn't hurt every once in a while to look around at your family. You know, maybe you're fighting with the wife. Maybe the kids were a little bratty today. Whatever the case may be, does not hurt to look around and be more appreciative of how you grew up, because out there's a 12-year-old without a family who's just praying somebody will adopt him. I'd say we could all be a little more thankful, don't you? All right. We'll be back to do this again. Don't you worry about that. We'll see you soon.